introducing myself, my name is Camille Bachar-Seguin, and I'm here with Elections Canada today. I am a teacher in Ontario, and I finished my Master's in Education about 2 years ago now, and I've been working with Elections Canada in the Civic Ed team ever since. We make resources for teachers across the country to bring democracy and elections into your classrooms. So today we will be taking a look at one of our resources a bit more in depth, which is voting rights through time. So to have a quick idea of what we're about to head into, we're going to do quick introductions, have an overview of our programming. Then we'll dive into the resource itself, and I will ask you to slip into your students' shoes in order to experience the resource itself. We'll have some time for discussion and questions, and I'll show you how you can order or download or view our resources as well. Now, throughout the presentation, I will be inviting you to follow a few links that I'll put in the chat, but I have done a little links document so that you can just easily find all of the links. So I've just sent that over in the chat. If you have a look, the page should look like this. And I will invite you to follow the different links throughout the presentation as well. So just kind of makes it easier than continuing to populate the chat. But if you are missing anything, do let me know. I will pop it in the chat anytime. Now, I've talked about myself a little bit, but I would love to know who is here today. So I would invite you to share your teaching context in the chat. So let me know what level you teach, what you teach, if you have different teachables. Just want to get a bit of a sense of who's in the room. And if you feel comfortable just answering that out loud, opening up your mic, maybe turning on your camera, you're very welcome to do that as well, whichever you're more comfortable with. So we've got pre-literacy, engagement and involvement, ethics and English in the first cycle, so grade 7 and 8, adults ed, ELA and media. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, in order to get to know you a little bit better again, I would ask you to just answer our first intro poll. So in the links document, the first link out here, if you want to click on that and follow it to answer, it's really short. It's just 3 questions. We want to know how confident you feel about teaching elections and democracy, how familiar you are with Elections Canada's resources, and what you hope to learn today. And I will try to make sure we touch on whatever it is that you answer. We've got a few answers in the meantime too. A student teacher in secondary social science, excellent. And someone who teaches everything, want to be able to modify this for elementary, great. Yes, absolutely, and I can make sure to talk about that. We've got business courses and a vocational school, thank you. Right, I see we've got 2 answers into the intro poll. I'll give you 1 more minute to answer those questions. Thank you. In the meantime, we've got more answers in the chat. We've got adult ed, and we've got Emily, our moderator. Thank you. All right, I see we've got 5 responses. I'll go and start having a look. So in general, maybe feel middle of the road about our confidence in teaching about elections and democracy. I do hope that you'll leave the presentation maybe feeling at least a little bit more confident in that, but that is very normal. This does really line up with what we've seen through surveying teachers across the country. And in general, we maybe don't know Elections Canada's resources very well. So I, again, hope that the presentation will give you a better sense of what you can find through our resources and what you hope to learn today. To get adult students to vote, new resources and ways to engage students, how to engage them in voting rights, and what to focus on when talking about elections. Excellent questions. Resources for teaching social studies, how to properly approach the subject and integrate it within the curriculum, and hoping to learn a lot. Great, I love that. Thank you so much for sending in your answers. Now, to start by talking a little bit about our resources. So we've did a whole update of our resources starting in 2018. We've been around for 20 years, but we had fewer resources back then, and we now have a full team of teachers that have created these. And in order to do this whole renewal of our resources, we consulted with 1,500 teachers across Canada to understand what it is that teachers needed in order to bring elections and democracy to their classrooms. And what we heard were that these were the things that teachers were looking for. So we're looking for resources that were inquiry-based. So all of our resources are around an inquiry question that students explore. They're cross-curricular, so they can be used in multiple subjects. They're collaborative. It is something that was really important to us, that the students are speaking to each other and working together throughout the activities. They're nonpartisan. We do not have a preferred political party. That is probably the most important thing for Elections Canada. All of our resources are bilingual. They're available in English and French. They're accessible and they are free. You can order them and we will ship them to your school for free. You can download and print them, or you can use the online versions as well, all for free. Now, every one of our lessons includes a big idea, an inquiry question, as I've mentioned, and it always follows a three-part structure. So we've always have a minds-on, an activity, and then a consolidation. And it includes hands-on materials. Like I said, you can order it and you'll receive it to your classroom. There's really some high-quality content like videos, maps, data, infographics, case studies, and more. So we'll have a bit of a look at those today. And like everybody, in 2020, we had to pivot a little bit, and we created blended learning tools for our resources. So we've adapted the physical kits to meet the needs of the blended classrooms that were popping up across the country. So those are meant to be used both online and in class as you wish. We understand that you're the pedagogical expert of your classroom, and that you can make the best decisions for your students. So it's really made in like a modular way so that you can pick and choose if you wanted to do, say, something that was online and maybe you're repurposing class time in order to have the students do that part on their own online and then come back to a larger group and do that part in person. They're really made for you to be able to adapt them to your classroom needs. Now, today, we'll talk a little bit more about inquiry learning as well. So as I mentioned, we wanted to have an inquiry pedagogical approach in our resources. So the guidelines we were using in order to create these inquiry-based lessons are the ones that are on the screen. So really wanted to emphasize the students' role in the learning process, to make sure students are engaged, that they're curious, and that they collaborate. There's really always a compelling question that guides the learning. So a question that's not going to get answered in the 1 hour lesson, a question that is supposed to linger, that you maybe want to bring home and talk to your friends and family about. It also is always looking to include critical thinking, that the students are constructing knowledge as they develop a conceptual understanding of the concepts at hand. And finally, it's an opportunity for students to respectfully challenge their ideas, test them and redefine them, especially as they collaborate and they push each other's thinking. So that is it for our little overview of our programming. We can now dive into our resource itself, which is called Voting Rights Through Time. And it follows the inquiry question, how inclusive is our democracy? And that's the question that's going to guide the learning throughout the activity. Now, as I've mentioned, we always start with a Minds On, so we're hoping to make a link between something the students already know and um, and the concepts that will be addressed in the lesson itself. So we start with this activity here where we distribute Post-its across the classroom, and we invite students to think of a time they felt excluded from something, and they write down one or two words that that represent the feeling that they had. So we're not asking them for details about this exclusion. We're just really looking for how they felt, which if you have language learners in your classroom, that's also a great moment to check in on their vocabulary and to help them maybe find better feeling words if they, if you notice that the whole classroom only uses like sad, we can, it's a good moment to kind of check in with their vocabulary. So I will invite you to now follow the link that says Minds On and to answer the little questions there. So the second question will be to invite you to think of a time you felt included and to just give us a few words about how you felt in a moment where you were excluded and included. So I'll invite you to follow the link to the Minds On, this second link here in the participant links document. I will add it over here just in case some of you are having trouble accessing the other document. So I invite you to fill that out and we'll have a quick look. If you don't feel comfortable sharing for yourself, you can also just put yourself in your student's shoes and imagine your student answering this if that feels maybe more comfortable. And it'll take a minute to do that. Great, I see we've got 4 answers in. I'll maybe just a few more seconds to let other people answer as well. All right, so I'm seeing answers such as for exclusion, isolated, unimportant, lonely, embarrassed, and angry. And then thinking of a time we were included, seeing answers such as useful, validated, hopeful, heartful. So wonderful, wonderful words here. I wonder if I'm able to just bring this. Yes, I can show you our answers in here. So if we were doing an online classroom, we might be using these blended learning tools, or if we were in a classroom in person, it might look more like the picture we have over here. Here we have Stéphane Perrault, who is the Chief Electoral Officer, doing that activity in a classroom. And we can see the Post-its that the students have answered. So the idea behind this is that the students with you are co-constructing criteria for what inclusion and exclusion looks like. And that's the jumping off board into our activity, which will be about inclusion and exclusion in voting rights through time. But this way, they're developing their conceptual understanding and they're centered in their own learning. It's their own words that are creating the definition for inclusion and exclusion here. So the activity itself is going to be students examining voting rights case studies in small groups. So if you're ordering the physical kit, it comes with these timeline activity boards, some context cards, and some case study cards. So there are 5 case studies now in our resource. So there's a case study about women, First Nations people, Inuit, youth, and Japanese Canadians. So we have case studies for all of these different groups. So you could distribute a different case study to everyone in your to every group in your classroom, or if you're doing it online, you might want to have everyone doing the same case study if you want to have a discussion about a particular historical case study or something of the sort. So in the activity, students take all of the cards that represent historical events, they read them aloud to their small group, and then they place it on the timeline by date and on the second axis. So there are 2 axes on the image. It might be a little bit hard to see in this picture, but we've got the timeline and the dates, but also an inclusion to exclusion scale. So students must decide together and come to a consensus as to whether this event is inclusive, exclusive, and to what degree. And then they get to build this timeline that shows them a whole history for the inclusion and exclusion of a particular group. So this way, they're really they're thinking critically to construct the knowledge about this historical case study in a collaborative way. Now, to do it online, we have links to all of our case studies. So while they're discussing, they'll be able to speak to one another and make decisions together. And that's one of the places where they can respectfully challenge each other's ideas for them to be able to come to a consensus. Now, if you are having a look at our participant links document, all of our case studies are here in the table here. I forgot the word table for a second. So I will invite you to pick one of the case studies and have a look at the first at the Google form. And we will take a bit longer to answer this one. This is more like a larger part of the activity. So whichever case study you would like to follow, you can go ahead and have a look through. And just answer how inclusive or exclusive you think any of these are. So if, for example, if I were to open up the case study about Japanese Canadians, this is what it should look like. She'll be able to read the context card, and there will be events. And through these events, you'll be able to read different things that happened, and you'll choose how inclusive or exclusive you feel this event is. And after a few minutes, we will come together to share a bit more about what we learned. So I will stop talking for 5 to 10 minutes, and I'll let you go through one of the case studies. If you just want to let me know, maybe in the chat when you are done, that would be wonderful. Thank you. All right, I see we have about 5 different people who have submitted answers to case studies. So let's maybe take a look at some of our answers at the moment. So I'll just slide this up here. There are 3 people who answered the women's case study. So let's have a look at what you were thinking and see if there was any disagreement. So for the first event, I see here generally we're all thinking the same, that this is an exclusive moment, whether it's very exclusive or a little bit exclusive. For the start of Confederation, where women cannot vote, we are in the purple and green. We've got some inclusion and exclusion in this 1876 moment. So the National Council for Women of Women is created to fight for women's right to vote. Women create similar groups across Canada. So is there anyone who would like to speak up, whether they chose inclusion or exclusion, or whether you did a different case study and this is your first time seeing this event, and just maybe explain your answer?
Hi, I can't really explain that because we're going along, and I looked at the picture and I realized that we're comparing it to women not voting. We think, oh, this is great, now women are included. But then you look at the picture and you go, okay, there's lots of people that are, lots of women that are still excluded.
Right.
So I think my answers are inconsistent. I think that is that part of the objective of the.
Yes, that's absolutely okay. Again, we want to have students thinking about their thinking, and it's all right if they change their mind halfway through. That's absolutely okay. I think in the physical activity, it's easier to go and move the cards, whereas online, unfortunately, once you've submitted your answer, it's a bit harder to go back. Absolutely. So do you want to tell us about so you found this maybe partly inclusive but still exclusive because of the different groups amongst women? Is that correct?
Yes, because I think it's, of course it's a positive development, and I think your tendency is to go, oh wow, great, this is inclusion, this is very inclusive. But then when I looked at the picture and I sort of went, yeah, well, it was a very white picture. So that made me put it on I think a +1. Yeah. I can't really remember what I put.
That's all right. Thank you. Yeah. So here, in conversations I've heard, so the fact that women are creating groups to fight for their right to vote as well can be seen as it's inclusive because it's a step in the right direction, if you will. At the same time, having to fight for your rights, is that inclusive, or is it still you're just reacting to exclusion? So these are the types of discussion we are hoping that this leads us to. Oh, we've got quite a mix of answers for 1916. So 1916, Manitoba is the first province in Canada to allow women to vote. Now, some women are still not allowed to vote for reasons other than their gender, which I think, Makirit, is what you were getting at. And there's about 40,000 people who signed a signature for women's rights. So we have different folks finding it, to seeing different things in that, which is, again, kind of the point. We're hoping that students will have a discussion about all of these events. We've got quite a few where there are different answers, different ways of seeing this, and that, again, is absolutely all right. In order to bring all of this together in the format for the online learning, I will invite you to, again, have a look at the links document and now follow the link to the Google Draw. So if you are opening one of the timelines, I'll just open it up, wants to follow the link here, I will invite you to take a look at the events. Now, in order to be reminded of the text that goes with these events, if you click Control-Alt-Y, as it is listed in the bottom corner here, it will give you Control-Alt-Y. It will give you the text. It will pop up, and you are able to just have a little review of what happened in 1867 and for each date. And I will invite you to move these around as to whether you find them inclusive or exclusive. However, I will invite you maybe to explain as you go, or especially if you are moving something someone else has placed, to just maybe explain why you feel a certain way about something as you move them. To see a lot of movement. Is there anyone who would like to explain a card that they've just placed somewhere? Whether that's out loud or through the chat, that's up to you, whichever you feel more comfortable with.
Sorry, so we're all working, are we all working on the same?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you're. I mean, you might be on different timelines. If we're, I'm just taking a look at women right now, but we might be moving across different links. Let's maybe have a look.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to be.
No, please.
All kinds of things here. Yeah. Oh, I have to put it in the right place. Oh my God.
Yes. Yes. So there's
it's a timeline. Uh-oh.
Yeah, exactly. Two axes to think about.
Help. Oops. Where's the is that 196?
Anyone's welcome to move the cards around. You can even undo someone else's work. That's all right. But if you do, I will ask you to maybe explain your decision.
Camille?
Yeah.
I just find that there's like 1918, 1916, and 1917, not so obvious to place it on the timeline.
Yes.
Is
that's
it?
All right. Okay. And they can go like one on top of each other. That's fine as well.
Okay. Because this is certainly not an exact science, but it's kind of I think it's
that's all right.
1993 here. Whoops, that's where Kim Campbell is often. She's in Back to the Future here.
Yeah, the timeline does go well, don't go up to the present really, but the events don't. We can move her a little bit closer to the 90s. Great. Great. Well, thank you so much, Marielle. I think you've moved most of these cards, and it gives us a sense of what a timeline might look like when the students are working through. So we've got, as I said, some more events are taking place closer to one another, and we can see a bit of a story of ups and downs, really, with inclusive and exclusive events. And in the classroom, we can invite students to kind of have a walk around and see what other groups did and what the case study that they were looking at, whether the timelines, whether they look the same or not. Like one of the things I really appreciate about this activity is that students get to see that the shape of the timeline is not necessarily everything kind of starting in the exclusive and ending in the inclusive. It's not, so progress isn't always just in one direction, right? Like there can be setbacks and things that go well and then that don't go well, and you kind of change around. So that's one of the things we'll ask them to observe as they go and see other people's timelines. Now, let's head back to our little presentation here. For our students who might be done before others, we do have an extra little activity, which is the turning point frame. So I don't know if, especially those who are teaching social studies, you might have heard about might work a lot with the historical thinking concepts. So this is to connect to continuity and change. So students have this frame that they put on what they see as the turning point of their story. So thinking about when the things start to change in direction or pace, where all of a sudden lots of things were happening and things like that. So we invite them to have a further discussion on this. Again, looking to get them to have like a conceptual understanding of what a turning point might be in history. Now you've seen the online adaptation where students place this online. And after they've done the activity, they have seen everyone's different timelines. We are going to have a consolidation, so a reflection and discussion. So we invite you to ask your students the question, does getting the right to vote always mean inclusion in democracy? So we'll give you a minute to think about that. If you'd like to write an answer in the chat, or if you feel comfortable speaking up in the group, I will let you take a moment to do that.
Camille?
Yes.
I'm just thinking about one of the first slides was that even amongst men, when men had the right to vote, they had to be property owners. This is not something that was brought up again. When was that change? Because that excludes a lot of people.
Absolutely, yes. So if you were
economic exclusion.
Yeah, so if you were doing, I think, all of the case studies, you'd be able to piece little parts of it. We do have in the teacher's guide all sorts of background information that shows exactly when different parts of that were dropped. I can't remember off the top of my head when the property clause was dropped. I can go and take a look and come back to it afterwards.
No, it's okay. It's just something that would potentially come up
Yes,
because
absolutely.
not all men were included in that.
Yes.
So even economically, people were.
Yes, for sure.
And in terms of literacy, because the whole idea of the petition, who would have been asked to sign this petition, right?
Yes.
And who would have been able to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, that's a great comment. I think it leads us perfectly into our little video here, which I think I have to stop sharing and share again in order to share with sound. So I'll just take 1 second here. 1, 2. Share audio. So this video, pardon me. I'll just stop. I'll just put it here for 1 second. So this video goes through a bit more of the rights to vote in general, and I will just move this here for 1 second. I do love to ask students to guess, and you might have seen the answer. It did appear on the screen for just a second. But if you had to take a guess, what percentage of the population do you think had the right to vote in 1867? So I will invite you, hoping that no one has seen the answer already, I will invite you to take a guess in the chat of what percentage of the population do you think had the right to vote in 1867 at Confederation. We've got 20%, 18%, right? We've got 2 guesses, and they are pretty close. It is 11% of the population. So let's just have a quick look at the video talking about that.
How many Canadians do you think had the right to vote in 1867? 11% of the population. Who could vote? Men who were at least 21 years old and owned property. That left everyone else without voting rights. Men who didn't own property, women, and anyone under 21 years old. But Canada has changed a lot since 1867. Who has the right to vote today? About 75% of today's population. All Canadian citizens over 18 years old have the right to vote in Canada. Who doesn't have the right to vote today? Anyone under 18 years old, residents who are not Canadian citizens, and the Chief Electoral Officer of Canada. How do you think voting rights could change in the future?
Stop sharing and share again. Great. Now, so this kind of gives us a bit more of an overview how things have changed. And I did take a moment to go and look up your question, Margaret, for property ownership. It was until 1920 that was a part of who had voting rights. Yeah. So there is this video to do a bit of a consolidation, but there's also an infographic that is on the screen where students can compare 1867 to today in terms of the percentage of people who could vote and who couldn't, and who those people were. So it's a tool really to help students kind of see the big picture after having worked really just on one case study. And I do find the 11% to be a rather shocking statistic personally. I do enjoy seeing people trying to guess and think of how representative that was of the population having such a low percentage. Now, we invite students to further reflect. So there is a thinking guide that can be done as a sit down and like write on yourself by yourself, or have small group discussions, or a whole group discussion about these questions. So invite students to think about what surprised them the most about inclusion and exclusion in Canadian democracy, and what's a question that they have now, and what other changes are needed to make Canada's democracy more inclusive. So just invite them to kind of look to the future for this. And again, this is really to engage them in their own curiosity and to continue the inquiry a little bit. So we have this question about how inclusive is our democracy that we've started as our starting point. We kind of want them to be continuing to continuing to think about that as they leave the lesson. Now we are wrapping up on our side of things here as well. So I do wonder if this has brought any new ideas now, or a question that you have. So ask in the chat if you have a new idea or a question. I would love to hear it. Again, whether that's in the chat or in the conversation on in the meeting.
Well, I just want to thank you very much. This was it was really great presentation, because I have seen some of the stuff for Elections Canada, and I have looked, and now this is great. I really find it's very topical, and it would work wonderfully with the group that I have, because I have a lot of pre-literacy, so it's a lot of new Canadians. So this is great, and I like the way you presented it as well. So you also modeled very well for online learning. So I felt I was engaged with the material. So I really appreciate it.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for that feedback. We really appreciate it. Now, if there are no other questions, I will take a minute to talk about all of the resources that we have. So again, all of these resources are free to order or download, and most of them have a blended learning version like the one we used today to meet virtually for this conference. So I would like to just take a minute and kind of go through a few of them. So choosing our mascot is one that is for early learners. I do remember someone asking about younger kids earlier in the presentation. So choosing our mascot is really like an introduction to what an election is for K-3 students. It's really cute. Students are voting for a mascot for their classroom, and it's all Arctic animals. They have these little songs to present themselves, and I find it's a very cute activity to do with them. The next one is the election simulation toolkit, which I think also is one of the ones that's best used for younger students as well. I think the title is a bit self-explanatory. It's a kit in order to do an election simulation in your classroom, really to engage the students in that process. And in this new version, there are a bunch of different role cards that the students are taking on. So you have students who would be candidates in this election. There are the candidates have a team with speech writers and campaign managers. There are students who would work as the electoral officers. So we have students who are running the election itself in the classroom. Really lovely for all levels, truly, I'd say from K to 12 and for adults, and really wonderful for language learners as well, as there are lots of different pieces to support language learners in this. For example, there is a speech template for the candidates to prepare their speeches. They get the chance to practice oral presentations if they have some specific roles, so you can pick students you think might be challenged by that. So really lots of opportunities with the simulation toolkit. Another one of our popular activities is Civic Action Then and Now. So this one is also based in historical case studies. It's different groups that have taken civic actions in order to bring change in Canadian history. So students are looking at those historical case studies to then inspire themselves to plan a civic action based on what they learned through the historical ones. Digital skills for democracy is about mis and disinformation online, and again can be done online or completely offline as well. We know that you don't always have access to an internet connection in your classroom, so students are looking through these scenarios and getting the tools in order to judge how reliable information they might meet online is. Does voting matter? Again, is one that I think can be easily done with younger students as well. It's a fun election simulation where we do different simulations with different voter turnouts, and students really experience the effect of voting. So whether they were chosen to be part of the group that votes or not, everyone everyone has to follow what the like the results of the elections are. So it's these fun little parties. I think you might be able to see in the hands of the student here is the zombie party that he is the representative of. And so if the zombie party wins, everyone has to walk around like zombies in the classroom. And so it's a bit silly and fun, but gets to more serious topics afterwards, where there are Canadians explaining what having the right to vote means to them afterwards. Now up next is elections by the numbers, in which students are interpreting data on voter turnout. So they're looking at different age groups and their representation at the polls, and try to see what is different for the youth and turning up at the polls. And then they represent that data through infographics. So we've got some math and some language skills in there as well. And getting close to the end now, geography of elections is a fun one as well, where students compare their electoral riding to others in Canada to see how they differ and how they are similar. And it's an activity that I think goes really well with mapping electoral districts, which is really, if you will, like a bit of a simulation that reminds us of the redistribution process, which you have probably heard about in the news. So every 10 years in Canada, we are redrawing the electoral boundaries. And that process is happening at the moment this year. And in this, the students have a fictional country, and they have a large map, as you can see on the pictures here. And they have smaller maps, which are the references, the reference maps. So they get a bunch of different information, like the linguistic groups that live in this imaginary country, the groups that have a shared history that live on this map, how many people live in different parts. So we've got like cities, but we also have rural spaces on this map, and they're the ones dividing up the country in writings, and they have to explain they have to justify how that is an equitable division of the population of their fictional country. And finally, Which Elections, which is a resource we created with the electoral management bodies of all the different provinces and territories, which is to help students understand the different levels of government and the elections that happen at different levels. So they do a bunch of different activities to think through that. Now, if you are wondering what course might fit into your classroom, which one is linked to your curriculum, we have looked at every curriculum across the country to see where it fits. So you can do a search on our Curriculum Connections tool. You can search by province, by course, by subject area, language, or resource. So you would get something that is linked to the curriculum for your specific classroom. Now, if you do want to order our resources, our website is electionsanddemocracy.ca. You do have that link in the link document as well here. If you, the last link here is directly to go to Voting Rights Through Time, the one we saw today. But if you're looking for all of our other resources, they're under Learning Resources. You can have a look. And if you are just wanting to order, there is a link right from the home page, Order Resources. If you click on Order, this will bring you to the order form. Just fill out your information and choose which lessons you are looking for in English or French, or French, and then submit. And usually within 2 weeks, that should be delivered to you. So let's just jump back here. And that is the end for me. I will invite you to answer our short exit poll, which again is in the links document. It is the exit poll at the bottom. I will add it to the chat once more if anyone's having trouble accessing this document. So we'd love to just get a sense of how that was for you. And that is it for me. I will thank you for being with us today. If there are further questions, I'm happy to stay and answer them. But other than that, you are free to go and get a bit of a longer break before your next session. Thank you so much.